Good morning. I'm glad to see you back. My name is Lee Bishop. I'll be moderating this session to kick off the second day of the conference. The issue of marks and standards compliance is something that came up in almost every session that I was involved in yesterday. And there is a lot of information and, frankly, misinformation about the relative value of marks and standards and what they mean and how a consumer or a business perceives that value in real terms and in the sense of competitive advantage. And it's a very complicated area, but it's one that we have the benefit of some wonderful panelists here to raise these issues and to help explain those. And if this group is anything like the group I was in yesterday, they are not shy about expressing their concern or question if we're not clear enough. So please, we're small enough now that we can have that kind of discussion, and I do hope that we do. The focus of the session, as I said, is to discuss what role marks play in assurance of quality and in consumers' assurance, and to what extent the difference between mandatory marks and voluntary marks, and what that might mean for the trust mark from the QCC over time, and what impact that might have on the economic development of Abu Dhabi. So with this group, we have Howard Kerr, who's the Chief Executive of British Standards Institute, BSI. And he has a short presentation, which is extremely enlightening, and we're going to have that first. We're also going to hear from Victor Kozlowski from TUV Rhineland, a globally recognized and very excellent standards organization, and Peter Unger from ILAC, an accreditation service similar to, but as Peter says, much different than UCAS from yesterday, and I'm sure he'll be able to describe those differences. And I've been told that I have a free rein to ask a lot of very hard questions of Abdullah Al-Muwaini about how this is to be applied and how this could be used in Abu Dhabi. So to get started, Peter, or Howard, I mean, can you get us started, please?
Thank you. If I could have the presentation, please. Thank you. I'd just like to share some experiences from BSI's long history in quality marks. BSI is maybe the owner of the oldest quality mark in current existence, the kite mark in the UK, which was actually launched in 1901. So it's 112 years old this year. And that says something about what a quality mark is really intended to do, and potentially how long it can take for a quality mark to become established, truly established and sustainable in a market. These are the marks that we use in the UK, which are, if you walk down an average UK high street and take a random sample of individuals and ask them about the kite mark in the UK is a household name. It's almost a generic for quality. It's used by various stakeholders in various situations in a non-legal way to define what quality means. I think the aspiration that Abu Dhabi has in its 2030 vision is to achieve something like that level of recognition and appreciation of what a quality mark can do for a product and for a society. It's equally for consumers as for businesses. A lot of people think that quality marks are really just consumer-facing products. We disagree with that. They are really there for individual product manufacturers as well as for consumers who are both trying to achieve the same thing. So the example I've given here is of a typical building for a consumer, be it the electrical appliance, be it the construction products used in the house, or the fire detection mechanism. All quality marks can be applied to those type of products in a household situation for a consumer. The research that we've done, and this graphic I think shows you how strong the feeling can be and loyalty and recognition can be towards a mark. The kite mark in the UK has not only high brand recognition in excess of 70%, over 70% of UK consumers recognize unprompted the kite mark and what it stands for. But you look at the words that they use, and these are the consumers' words, these are not our words, this came from free market research. Trust, reliability, safety, quality, these are the words that time and again people associate with marks. And the word search also reinforces that. Equally, from a business point of view, for those people who are manufacturing the appliances or fire suppression systems or construction products going into a building, this is equally applicable. And the research that we have done with product manufacturers and brand owners, equally, in slightly different priorities, the same words tend to be repeated time and time again: quality, safety, reliability, trust, tried and tested, assurance. In business, it's about professionalism, it's about confidence. These are the words that people use in a business context when they talk about quality marks, and the way that it can not only improve their product, but also can improve their business and their enterprise. It's interesting that in recent times, quality marks have started to extend from products into services. Traditionally, quality marks have been applied to industrial products. Then that was certainly how the quality marks developed in the UK. So from 1900 to 1950, they were applied more to quality, to industrial products, infrastructure, railway lines, and pipework for water drainage, for example. In the 1950s, it moved on to consumer products, so household electrical appliances, kettles, toasters, children's toys, for example. In the recent decade, we have more and more inquiries about applying a quality mark to a service. The example I've used here, vehicle repairs. So a large issue for the insurance industry in the UK and for car drivers and for the government was how to assure the quality of repairs of vehicles after a crash, from a cost point of view, but also from a safety point of view. So we see a natural extension of quality marks beyond industrial products, beyond consumer products, into services. And recently, the UK government has asked us, and we're now actively working with the UK government about putting a quality mark on simple financial products. So simple savings accounts, for example, in banks. And you'll all be aware of the issues of trust that there are with retail banks in various parts of the world at the moment. The importance of consumers having confidence that not only the bank that they are depositing their money with, but that the product that they are investing it in is transparent, is reliable, and they can trust and rely upon it. And we see this as being a very important new area of development for quality marks in future. We are working already with Abu Dhabi authorities, the example here with Abu Dhabi Civil Defence on fire detection and suppression systems. We've had two delegations from Abu Dhabi working with us on understanding not only the quality mark scheme, but the underpinning of the scheme. Any quality mark scheme relies upon an underlying standard or a regulation which is underpinned by a standard. What is a quality mark? A quality mark is really just a visible demonstration that a product or service or company complies with a stated standard. That is it, simply put. But a quality mark is not just a statement at the simple level that a quality mark meets a standard. The way that we use the kite mark, and I imagine that the Abu Dhabi quality mark will evolve, will be a statement that a product or organization has gone beyond the standard. They haven't just done the minimum required to comply with the standard, they've gone beyond it to demonstrate a higher level of quality and deliver a higher level of confidence to the user of that product or service. Just as in the world of standards, we work very actively within the international standards community to assure equivalence of standards so that standards in different parts of the world can be compared on a universal basis. Equally, in the world of quality marks, there is an important push towards mutual recognition of quality marks. One thing that confuses consumers and manufacturers is, in some cases, a proliferation of marks. There are many, many marks out there in the market. So understanding that which mark is relevant, which mark can be relied upon, is extremely important. The Abu Dhabi mark is joining the international family of quality marks. It's important that not only that Abu Dhabi consumers understand the value of the Abu Dhabi mark, but that people who are supplying products into the market are able to calibrate and align those quality marks to marks which are established elsewhere, whether it's the kite mark in the UK, the UL mark in the US, or the CE mark across Europe. It's very important for manufacturers that quality marks are aligned and that organizations do not have to apply many, many times for different quality marks. So we have a responsibility within the standards and conformity assessment world to ensure that standards and quality marks are as consistent as possible. Some of the benefits of standards have been well documented, and you see some of the economic data up there. This is proven data, the contribution that standardization can make to GDP development in many societies and many sectors, I think, is well researched and well documented. The contribution that standardization can make to the UAE's FDI objective, I think, will lend itself very naturally to that, and I'm sure standardization will help to accelerate the process and increase the value from the process. The benefits to individual organizations is clearly documented as well. Just some examples here from various sectors, which shows from our research how organizations that have embraced standards and quality marks have quantifiably achieved benefits from that process. And these are some of the statements that our users of quality marks, so organizations that have adopted quality marks and applied them successfully to their businesses, the benefits to their business in terms of customer satisfaction, reduction in product failure, product recalls. There are many, many, many examples of how quality marks, whether they be mandated marks by government or whether they be voluntary marks. One of the beauties of quality marks is they can be mandated by authorities and have a statutory underpinning, for example, like the CE mark in Europe, or like the kite mark in the UK, they can be a quality mark which organizations voluntarily decide to go beyond the minimum requirement to differentiate their product and their services, to provide a higher level of confidence, but also potentially to give those organizations a marketing advantage. So last but not least, a quality mark really in isolation is worthless. All quality marks are not of equal benefit. All quality marks must be underpinned by a robust and transparent standard, which the whole of industry and society has engaged in. And if I have one piece of advice for those people working on developing the Abu Dhabi mark, is to engage as widely as possible with stakeholders, with trade associations, with chambers of commerce, with consumer groups, and with regulators to ensure that not only the quality mark is understood, but that all stakeholders buy into that. In that way, I think then Abu Dhabi will have a quality mark in future, but it will take time of note, and it will be comparable to other quality marks elsewhere in the world. So those are the comments really I wanted to make at this stage, Lee. Thank you. That's great.
I've got a couple questions that if others do as well. Your survey and your study of the value that's attributed to the kite mark. Have you done studies of what value is given to a product from a mandatory mark, like a CE mark, that every product has that's on the market?
No, we haven't specifically done them on CE marks because CE marks are very broad and they cover such a wide range of products.
What do you think?
Well, I think that the value over time of a statutory mark diminishes. The more you put a statutory mark on products and people become more familiar, and it is on such a wide range of products, I think it almost gets taken for granted. Quality marks have to be continuously invested in, they have to be promoted, they have to be applied to new and relevant technologies, otherwise they lose their traction.
It's almost, it seems that a statutory mark requires more diligence to police to maintain what value it has?
In early stage markets, in the absence of voluntary marks, I think statutory marks and the ability of government to promote statutory marks and underpin them, if necessary, through regulation, can help to build a position for quality marks.
Right.
But then I think industry can take up the challenge and can then go beyond the statutory mark to promote voluntary marks.
Okay, one more thing for me, at least, and that sort of feeds into the other question is, you mentioned mutual recognition of marks, and this came up in one session I had yesterday, and it's somewhat confusing to me, at least, that it seems to me almost inconsistent to say that there should be mutual recognition, but yet individual voluntary marks need to show differentiation. What does mutual recognition mean in the sense of that you were talking about?
I think differentiation can come from voluntary marks going beyond the statutory requirements. They may be national marks, and I think it's a duty between countries and with quality marks to ensure that a kite mark in the UK, for example, for a fire detection product, if it is underpinned by the same standards, it's quite easy to ensure that the Abu Dhabi equivalent mark, for example, is defined and implemented in a very similar way, so that a manufacturer does not have to go through two processes to get a mark. They can essentially go through one mark. It's an efficiency issue more than anything else. Good.
Very interesting information. Thanks, Howard. Volker, comments from the TUV perspective.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Ellie, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor for me as a representative of TÜV Rheinland to be speaking here at the Abu Dhabi Quality Forum today. Quality and standards are at the core of international business in a globalized world, and only those companies who adhere to them will prevail in the harsh environment and competition. But of similar importance, they are for the safety and security of society, as a clear indication and a sure sign of compliance. In today's world, consumers have to choose between a variety of different products and services. They need orientation for selecting the right services, products regarding safety, environmental compatibility, and sustainability. With respect to this, TÜV Rheinland believes that the new trust mark in its application to the United Arab Emirates economy will show tangible results, all players involved. TÜV Rheinland has experience with this since 1872. We started out over 140 years ago in the testing business with steam boilers. Even today, testing them is still one of our most important business fields, and all the jobs we are doing there are based on voluntary agreements on quality standards which has been discussed and defined in mutual understanding with the industry. Over the years, our endeavors have spread wide and far, both in terms of business and geography. By the way, the region, India, Middle East, Africa, has been the fastest growing for us in 2012. And our regional headquarters is right here in Abu Dhabi. Now, being economically successful in times of ongoing globalization and developing climate change, today and tomorrow means creating an economic edge, a way to set oneself apart from competition. With regard to the new trust mark, this means to test, verify, calibrate, or certify products and thus assure that they comply with the standing UAA regulation. So where could the UAA stand in 5 years from now, when the trust mark will have been awarded to household products with better energy efficiency? For sure, the high energy saving potential will show effects on both costs and the environment. With rising demand for energy in the region, efficiency must be increased. The trust mark will support this development for the UAE, for the potential to save on energy costs are high. Or look at the economic losses due to counterfeit products. The local impact are manifold, and with a new trust mark applied for products, consumers will have higher quality products, and ultimately trust in the market will go up. It is hard to really say what the world might look like 15 years from now, but one thing is clear: objective, standardized norms and processes to make products or services comparable and to give orientation will be available and will be implemented. One of the main points here is transparency for all parties involved or even just interested. With a new trust mark, the Emirates economy will experience an increase in export when it has gained international recognition over time. Manufacturers can, through the conformity assessment services, enter new markets and truly enhance the economy here. But maybe do not even have a look into the far future. The most important impact of the trust mark could already be achieved in the next 12 months. It is accepted by both the industry and the consumers as a reliable and valuable mark. It must be ensured that products and services labeled with the trust mark stand up to their expectations. To this end, and they have to be in compliance with safety, quality, and reliability standards, as well with the Emirates regulations. Only then an economic benefit will be achieved in the long term. Less accidents with hazardous products, less recalls of non-compliant products, less downtime times of plants, less consumption of energy, and lower expenses of rehabilitation costs for the environment. These are the effects that lead to more overall success. You can also expect a better protection of consumers and, at a broader scale, a sharper competitive edge of the Emirates economy for sustainable growth. So again, we, as testing house with a long tradition, with German roots and international business, highly support every measure that promotes quality through standards. The new trust mark, from my point of view, will undoubtedly be beneficial for Abu Dhabi's export and the domestic market. So congratulations from TÜV Rheinland for introducing the trust mark to the Abu Dhabi economy. Thank you.
Very good. You touched on this toward the end of your comments, and I'd be interested from both you and Howard. What are obviously you started with your mark, was 1870 something?
Yeah,
and
72.
Howard, you were 1901. So we sort of don't have that much time to do that here, and if we're looking at a 2030 goal, and in order to get to that, we need to have faster value appreciation than even that. What are the 3 or 4 things that are the most important things that Abu Dhabi can do to have value attributed to its mark?
Yeah, from my perspective, is first of all, as we've learned already, to define a transparent standard which is really in line with the international requirements against safety, sustainability, and energy efficiency. If you have defined that, you have to introduce it to the industry, and you have to make it transparent and available and understandable for each party involved. If you define that standard being valid for a certification, I think it's a kind of attitude which is needed to sustain on that standard, to live on this standard, and not to agree any faults or deviations which would affect a trust sign and the quality which in the recognition of a trust mark in a bad manner. So to be sustainable, to be patient, and to be clear and transparent would be my first suggestion for a good introduction.
Howard?
Three suggestions really. One, focus on relevant products and services for today. Start small and build out. So whether it be counterfeit medical devices or substandard food products or unsafe electrical products, start on the real issues of today, because a win in those areas essentially establishes very early credibility, not just for the regulator, but also with consumers. Secondly, it does require, in our experience, a lot of upfront promotion and awareness. A mark is like a brand. Like any brand, it has to be created and it has to be sustained. You have to promote it, promote the benefits, and raise awareness and train. Thirdly, for a quality mark to be effective, it has to be effectively policed. So a rigorous conformity assessment regime which not only inspects and tests, but is seen to be having an effect, is seen to be having products, substandard products and services withdrawn from the market, so that there are real penalties for businesses who do not meet the standard, and there are real visible benefits to consumers.
Seems that you're looking at a measured, I'm sorry, a measured application of the mark as opposed to broad-based introduction.
I think throwing the trust mark over multiple products very, very quickly would run a high risk of failure.
Peter, from the standpoint of your agency, how do you see the ways, the paths for success in the development of any mark, or particularly this one?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the hosts for inviting me. This is the first time I've been to Abu Dhabi, and I was surprised when I arrived that it was raining, which I wouldn't have expected. But last month, I visited for the first time Riyadh, and it was raining when I arrived then. So perhaps if you need rain in the future, you might invite me back again.
This is basically turning into Seattle.
I represent the accreditation community, and that is different than certification. I know we have a lot of market confusion about this. Accreditation is a recognition of an organization, a body, to carry out specific conformity assessment tasks, such as testing, inspection, certification of all kinds, certification of products, certification of systems, processes, people. Keep that distinction in mind, because the market gets confused about this. There are standards for accreditation as well as conformity assessment certification that ISO has put together in their Conformity Assessment Policy Committee, CASCO. The 17,000 series are the operative numberings of the standards for accreditation and certification. I am the chair of the International Laboratory Accreditation Cooperation, and we are in the business of trying to develop and establish a recognition of accredited test data, calibration, and inspection data across borders. And we do this by a mutual recognition arrangement, or MRA, which in effect is saying to the world, each accreditation body that is a signatory to the MRA is providing accreditation equivalent to all the other signatories for the particular types of tests that it offers. There's a sister organization, IAF, International Accreditation Forum, that deals with the accreditation of certification bodies, such as the bodies represented to my right. That organization is, and again, recognizing or setting up an MLA for product certification, for management system certification, so that accredited certification bodies can be relied upon to provide decent, accurate, reliable results. And that's the aim, to provide confidence to the marketplace that the certifications, the marks, you can have greater trust, if you will, greater value, greater confidence that the mark is actually providing you with the accurate information about the product meeting various specifications for quality, safety, reliability, energy efficiency, whatever the specification for that product is. An accredited certification body is more likely to provide you with the data and also provide the infrastructure for market surveillance. That's an incredibly important issue, because once your trust mark becomes popular, you will get all kinds of people copying it. And it is done very easily in this electronic age. We see it all the time, that their marks are being copied. And the certification scheme owner, Abu Dhabi, has to make sure that certification bodies that are authorized and companies that are authorized to use that mark have some sort of market surveillance to make sure that mark isn't being misused in the marketplace. We see a lot of misuse in the marketplace, and it's directly proportional to the popularity of the standard or the certification in place. So you see, for instance, ISO 9001 is quality management system standard. You see many, many companies around the world claiming that they're ISO certified, ISO 9001 certified. Well, who did the certification? Not ISO. ISO is not a certification body. They're a standards writing body. But that information is in the marketplace is very confusing. People look for, are you ISO certified? Well, that's not correct. It's not correct. Certification bodies accredited by IAF are the ones you should look for and the marks that you should look for. So I have a concern, from my point of view, accreditation bodies are trying to ensure that certification and testing is done properly and competently. We're not guaranteeing that the data will always be correct, but that is our objective, to provide confidence to the marketplace that these conformity assessment results can be relied upon to make your decisions in the marketplace. Thank you.
It's interesting, as we've talked about the two trends that I've seen in my practice that have put stress on the system dramatically have been the proliferation of testing bodies everywhere. Every meeting, when we go to an industry meeting, you find the lobby is filled with the marquees of the new testing bodies that you haven't seen before, and it's that combined with the evolution toward certification of business systems and processes as opposed to hard product testing. It seems that it's one thing to test the machines to make sure that their tolerances are correct and the actual measurements are done. How do you ensure a consistent application of a standard when the standard itself is subjective in the sense of adequate management systems or control processes to ensure that a mark is continually applied properly?
You raised an interesting issue. From my experience, I'm involved, of course, in participating in standards writing related to testing accreditation for the last 30 years. And you're right, the consensus process sometimes results in a standard that isn't absolutely definitive. There may be ambiguities built into it because that's the only way we could reach consensus. So there may be different applications of the standard, different implementations that cause inconsistency. I accept that that is a continuing issue and problem. We at ILAC have committees and working groups to actually develop what we call application documents to explain or to provide more consistency and guidance to accreditation bodies and, in turn, testing laboratories as to what these requirements in the standard actually mean and how they're implemented. The same thing is true at IAF. They provide, develop mandatory guidance or documents that further elaborate on the standard when the standard is vague or inconsistent. Now, product standards, if they're not clear, that's a problem. And I'm not in the business of writing product standards.
In terms of the writing a standard to govern a change process or a product introduction process or a standard or a continuing compliance for manufactured products is very difficult. In order to be, as you say, in order to be generally applicable, you have to resort to a level of generality which makes it less effective in that, and then each country has its own expectations of what they think those words mean. Does that mean that then the accreditation from one region to the next has its own set of guidance and its own set of interpretations that may be different from some other region?
Well, I'm not sure how to tackle this multifaceted question. First of all, we have to make sure that the standard or the specification has appropriate test method specifications so that we get reproducible results on the testing. And that obviously requires perhaps some, in effect, standardization of the testing, and that test methods have to be standardized so that we get reproducible results. Then where I see the real issues is in the actual implementation of whether it's a system standard, process standard, whatever. 9000 is a good example. We have a quality management system standard. But every sector, virtually a dozen industry sectors around the world have developed their own quality management system standard. Aerospace, automotive, because they saw that the generic 9001 didn't quite make it in their industry. So they've developed 9001 plus. Now, I don't know whether that's answered your question or not, but I'm raising that issue.
But when you introduce that level of complexity, how do you maintain a level of consistency in interpretation since you've introduced a level of variability that is, as you say, almost industry specific? We heard yesterday about the peculiar challenges of the nuclear industry and of the plastics industry. I mean, is it an industry specific variation or a regional variation or both?
I think I have to admit it's inevitable that if you have multiple laboratories in the business, they're going to come out with results that aren't going to be exactly the same. And that's why we have a concept called measurement uncertainty. So every result that you get from a laboratory or a calibration has a value and then a spread of where that true value may fall. And we discipline, in effect, we're requiring the laboratories to develop their measurement uncertainty budgets so that decision makers, when they get a data point, they'll know if it's close to the spec limit and their uncertainty range brackets the spec limit, you really can't say whether or not the product meets the spec. And maybe it has to be retested, rethought, whatever, but the decision maker has to be educated enough to understand that testing any individual result has an uncertainty associated with it.
Volker, have you comments on this whole problem from your perspective?
Yeah, that is maybe one of the differentiations of the testing and certification bodies as well. To organize yourself to organize an exchange of experience and interpretation of standards, to make standards available on an automized platform. TÜV Rheinland, for instance, has introduced workflow management systems which enable all our experts in the global network to get access to the best engineering practice which is available there. And with this kind of automation, continuous exchange of experience, you can avoid a wide variety of interpretations. But for sure, we are facing in certain regions and in certain sectors different interpretations towards the same standard. And that is a part of our business. So to be sustainable, to have an own strategy, our strategy is a high level of expertism and a high level of quality was a good approach to achieve our 140th anniversary. And we want to continue that way.
Howard?
As BSI, I can actually talk as a standards maker as well as a certification body. Clearly, it's our duty as standards makers to ensure that there is full consultation and consensus in the standard. That is fundamental to the development of genuine market-facing standards. I would argue that any genuine consensus standard is always better than no standard at all. Exactly. But it can always be improved. And the derivatives of 9001 that were mentioned earlier, I think, is an example of where industry has taken up the challenge to go beyond the original standard. So start with the standard, recognize that it's not perfect, and always look for opportunities. The spirit of a standard is continuous improvement, and start on that journey. On the certification side, all certification bodies are not the same. Third-party certification is open to interpretation. It's important that certification bodies are competence-based, that it's not just a simple application to become a certified. You have to earn the right to be a certification body and appointed, and you should always run the risk of being deselected as a certification body. Because if you don't do your job, essentially your lives are at risk. It's really, really important. The way I like to think of it is there are three, it's a triangle. Good standards, good accreditation, good certification. If you have all three together, you have a very, very powerful ecosystem. If one of those links is weak, if you have a weak standard, a non-consensual standard, ineffective accreditation, and non-competent certification bodies, the system does not work. Exactly. So you have to have all three working as partners with equal strength and effectiveness in the market.
Okay, well, the issue, one of the issues that I see as stressing that's all. You're obviously right about those things. The difficulty, though, is as the standards themselves become less objective by intent. I mean, if the point of a standard is to regulate and to encourage and recognize business excellence, I mean, it's one of the things we talked about yesterday. The goal is excellence, and if excellence is it's an inherently variable term depending on the industry and where you are. Mm-hmm. That means that your standard is inherently going to be a more general standard, which is going to require more vigilance, I would think, in order to make sure that the mark actually means something. I know that for a long time, having an ISO 9000 certification meant you had enough binders with enough tabs in it. And the difficulty was trying to just show that there was actually something there. How do you deal with that dynamic?
If I could just speak, I'd like to disagree
Please
with one
do.
comment you just made, which is that standards are a form of regulation. Standards are not a form of regulation. Standards are voluntary. They can be adopted and incorporated as a means of underpinning regulation, but by definition, standards are voluntary and consensus-driven. The way I like to describe it is standards are made with industry, for industry and society. If that process is working, if it has no value, if it is just numbers of pages in a ring folder, it will very quickly disappear. It's not delivering benefits. So it has to be value-driven. And the metrics that we measure over time, I think, show that whether it's ISO 9001, which has now been in existence for nearly 30 years, and BSI was the original author of the 9001 standard, shows that there is an appreciation, and the standard has moved on tremendously in that 30 years' time, and is still relevant. And next year there will be another reissue of 9001 to keep it up to date and relevant for today's technology, today's society, and to today's economic needs.
So how do you police that increase to keep a consistent application interpretation over time?
Well, clearly, if it's not consensus-based, and by consensus I don't just mean 4 or 5 people in industry getting together and writing a standard, it has to be a wide consensus and include the other stakeholders in the industry, consumers, regulators, NGOs, whoever has an interest in that standard, if it is genuinely open and robust. One of the criticisms of standards making often is that it takes so long. Why does it take 3 years to create an ISO standard, for example? For a very good reason, to get that genuine collaboration and consensus, to make sure that when the standard is published, it is fit for purpose and genuinely can be adopted by the market. But recognizing that, you know, as soon as you print it, it's probably already in need of an update.
Abdullah, any comments on what we've heard and how that might help you in developing the trust mark?
Sure. Assalamu alaikum and good morning. Well, before I tell you my views about the trust mark and how we develop the trust mark, and I wouldn't go and introduce QCC. I think yesterday we had an interesting presentation, an introduction about the QCC. However, one of our area of activities is product conformity. Now, for the benefit of clarification, product conformity is the process of assuring that a product, whether a product, a service, or a personnel, meet a specific requirement and a specific standards. The product conformity usually consists of 3 main areas: standards and requirement, or like standards and requirement. Then we have the testing regime and the inspection regime. All of that comes under a conformity assessment program and a conformity assessment scheme. The outcome of it is the mark, whether it's Abu Dhabi's trust mark, the kite mark, the tubes, Ryland mark, and any other marks. Now, I want to go back to the main question of this particular session. Marks, are they certifying standards or promoting excellence? The answer is simple. I think it's both. If it's a regulatory mark, if it's a regulatory safety mark, then it's basically certifying standards. However, when we have a quality mark, it's basically promoting excellence or promoting quality. And this is our mark. And usually the quality mark, as my colleague just said, quality marks are usually voluntary. They are driven by the consumer demands, the manufacturer's demand. They actually go and seek for the voluntary marks. Regulatory marks, they have no, I wouldn't say they have no value, but basically when it comes to marketing, they have no value because all the products need to comply and conform with the requirements. I would like also to quote Mr. Saud Al-Askar yesterday when he said the GSO mark is basically a mandatory safety mark. Our trust mark, our Abu Dhabi trust mark, is not the safety mark, is the quality mark, which basically states or indicates that a particular product meet the minimum requirement, the minimum safety requirement, in addition to other requirements that set by regulator or the industry themselves. Now, I was actually pleased to hear Howard's suggestions on how to develop our conformity schemes. My happiness comes from the fact that we have actually taken all of that into consideration. Before we develop a conformity scheme, we go and discuss it with our stakeholders, whether it's the manufacturer, the industry, the regulators, consumers groups, and so on. So we actually discuss with the industry, with the stakeholders before we develop a conformity scheme. And I think yesterday we had a very interesting 3-hour session of product conformity where a room full of different types of stakeholders discussing the requirement and setting the priorities for the Emirate of Abu Dhabi for the next 12 months. Another suggestion which was mentioned is to have an adequate policing regime. We in QCC, we do have market surveillance activities where we go to the market, We take product from the market, like a certified product from the market, and we send it for testing, for compliance testing. So that will give us an assurance of a continuous compliance with the requirements. And before we actually develop the quality, the Abu Dhabi Trust Mark, we have done a benchmarking. I mean, we studied the BSI Kite Mark, we studied the tools, and we bench our mark with the best practice in the world. Not to mention that we have actually been in the market, we have taken products from the market, we have tested them, and that has driven our priorities for the next for the future. Recently, we have, or basically in the past 7 months, we have introduced the Trust Mark for different types of products: window safety devices, the electrical appliances, the paints, and the water fixtures. And all of that were actually the immediate requirement of the industry and the regulators of Abu Dhabi. So I was really pleased to hear that we have taken into consideration all the advices that have been mentioned. Having said that, I want to guarantee Mr. Peter that next year, inshallah, when we meet here, we will be accredited by an ILAC member. So we are in the process now to get our product conformity and certification services accredited by a member who is by an accreditation body who is an ILAC member. So next year, when we meet here, you will see us an accredited certification body.
Well, first of all, I'd like to make sure it's understood the product certification MLA is part of the International Accreditation Forum, not ILAC. ILAC deals with accrediting testing laboratories and inspection bodies and the accreditation bodies involved. So we are sister organizations working together, but we've split up, in effect, we're two different organizations that way. So IAF is the leader, if you will, in accreditation of certification services. So, and clearly what we're trying to do at IAF is facilitate global trade, because supply chains are very lengthy and one needs to rely on certification bodies, testing laboratories on the other side of the world. You can't test everything up and down the supply chain. And so you want to have confidence that the other side of the world is doing the job that you want done on your products that are eventually going to be imported into your economy. So I see a prerequisite for the trust mark to use certification bodies that are accredited for the particular certification standards that you require to support the trust mark use.
We do, if you'll allow me, we do have that requirement that, I mean, we recognize certification issued by other accredited certification body. But going back, let me correct myself. I mean, we're developing testing capabilities as well here in Abu Dhabi, and our testing laboratories perhaps will be accredited by an ILAC member, as well as we have the inspection bodies that we're basically our inspection body, the testing capabilities, and the certification body will be accredited by either an ILAC member or an IAF, the sister companies. But also from our product conformity point of view, we do recognize certification issued by others accredited certification body as well.
Are there any questions from you out there? The whole concept of, as you can see, the struggle to maintain value in a mark has a lot to do with the consistency of interpretation, consistency of testing, and it's a global effort, as we have a global supply chain and a global industry. It makes that much more difficult and requires much more effort And it's something that's it's always evolving and always improving. And it's refreshing for all of us to see is the passion to make sure that this proceeds quickly and consistently. And it's critical to the success of Abu Dhabi, and it's critical to the success of this economy. I think we've managed to fill up our time. If there are any questions for any of you here or afterwards, we'll be around. Thank you very much. Oh, wait, I have one question, excuse me.
Assalamu alaikum and good morning. It's our pleasure to have you here all with us. My question is, any trust mark should be supported by standard scheme and caps. Therefore, how could be the ideal collaboration between all of them to create a trust mark?
Want to do that first?
Yeah. Well, basically, I think we're pleased here today to have a representative from the ILAC, or the chair of the ILAC, alongside with the IF. Now, there are certification bodies and testing laboratories who are accredited. Now, with their accreditation, that give us the confidence that whatever they are doing, I mean, they are competent to do what they are supposed to be doing. So having a mutual recognition between us and them, that will give us a confidence that the test report we receive from an accredited laboratory or a certificate we receive from an accredited certification body will give us a confidence that the product actually meets the requirement. So that's, it's a worldwide network of all the accredited conformity assessment bodies.
That's right. I mean, that is exactly the point. Is exactly the issue, is to make sure in order to have mutual recognition, you have to have accredited sources of certification. Otherwise, you can't have that mutual recognition.
Exactly.
Yeah. My name is Dr. Shibani from DOT, Department of Transport, in charge of quality assurance, quality control. I think we have missed something important in the standards. There must be you have to do accuracy test, repeatability test, reproducibility test between the lab techs within the lab and between different labs, and ensure that that percentage are fulfilled, so you can make sure in this case that product confirmed or not confirmed.
Well, I mean, the point you raise about the ability to maintain consistency of the product so that you know that the product is the same product that was certified and tested and approved. That old difficulty is obviously a mark does not indicate that every product has been inspected.
Yeah, because I give you an example. We have taken one product, we divide that product into 5 samples, distributed into 5 laboratories, and we got a difference in 50 to 60% different between test results and other test results. So you have to make sure first all these labs are really doing their job 100%. Otherwise, you cannot say this product comply or not comply.
We agree completely. I mean, yes, that's exactly right, and that's the challenge.
If you allow me, and this is the process of the lab to be accredited. If the lab is actually accredited, I think the process is to make sure that the product are giving the same result, or the tests are giving the same results over and over. The example you use, sending 5 different samples to 5 different labs, maybe not all the 5 labs are accredited. If they are sent to 5 accredited labs, I do believe that, and I hope that the result will be similar, will be somehow similar. And this, I mean, for the lab to be accredited, that a certificate or an assurance that that the lab comply with the requirement and they do the test as per the test methods.
Peter, before just one second, if you do find that if an industry complains, he says, look, I went to 5 different labs, they were all accredited by you or accredited by national accreditation bodies, and they were 50% different, what happens? What next? What do you do about that?
We have arguments. That's what happens. There's a dust-up. We have to accept that there's obviously uncertainties. There's going to be inconsistencies, and what's acceptable inconsistency versus unacceptable inconsistency.
50% is probably beyond.
What we're striving to do is improve consistency all the time, and setting up these mechanisms of auditing and oversight and testing is hopefully leading to improvement of consistency. But you're right. There are variations at the accreditation level, at the certification level, et cetera. And accreditation only really says they're competent to perform specific tasks. What are those specific tasks? They may do several other tasks that are outside their scope of accreditation. And the accreditation body is not making any claims about their competence to perform those tasks. So one has to look at the scope of accreditation of a certification body, of testing laboratories, to ensure that they have been checked out for their competence to run tests. But by the very nature, you can run a test 20 times and get 20 different results. As long as they're relatively tight together, it's acceptable. But when there's a spread, what's wrong? Where's the error?
I tell you, I'll give you a little unsolicited legal advice. If I were representing a company that had that situation, I would be in touch with that lab, with that accreditation body, and you'd get that resolved. That's unacceptable. I mean, granted, a normality curve can be tight or large, but a 50% variation is too much. Some level of variation we talked about is inherent in the system, but if that's what you're getting, then you need to keep pushing that, because that's not acceptable. Over in Xian.
Yes, hi. Thank you very much for this fruitful discussion. I'm Dr. Rihab Al-Amri from QCC, Senior Specialist of Conformity Assessment Body. I think I have met with Mr. Peter before in Proficiency Testing Conference in Dubai. And I just wanted to elaborate on that gentleman's question regarding the competency of the lab. Actually, what QCC is doing now, and that we are trying to ensure that all the CAPs, which testing lab is one of them, is fulfilling the minimum requirement, and this will ensure that all the labs in the Emirate of Abu Dhabi are performing in a very good competency level. And so this will ensure that all the tests will meet the requirement from the technical requirement, and as well as will cover like the minimum competency. And then the accreditation, as it is a voluntary activity, so if there is a need of an accreditation for a specific scope by regulators or by a conformity schemes, so then it will be a voluntary to go and for this accreditation. As well as we are very focusing and putting more effort for the lab to go and work more in uncertainty, as you said, because it will be very difficult to ensure that the result will be accurate if you are not, concerned about the uncertainty. And I guess, Mr. Peter, you are just agree on the uncertainty and how it's important. And to be honest, many labs, they ignore this part. Either they don't know about it or it's difficult for them to calculate it.
Thank you very much. I think we've pushed past our time. Thank you very much for your participation, and feel free, please, if you have questions, to follow up with any of us after the session. Thank you very much.